Hey guys, my name is Rye. Today I wanted to go through and talk about the Chrono Warden preservation changes for next patch, what the outlook looks like on Mythic Plus, and how we're going to be approaching a rework talent tree. I'm actually pretty disappointed with the talent tree changes, and I'm open here on the PTR, and we're going to go through each one of them and kind of talk through what I think to be some of the valuable changes, some of the things they completely missed the mark on, and we're going to start all the way from the top. Alright, so I've reset the talent tree here, and we're going to be looking at Chrono Warden. Specifically, they've definitely put the niche of Chrono Warden in for Preservation Evoker Mythic Plus. Flame Shaper has not been redesigned in any meaningful way that I think it's going to be impactful enough to play in Mythic Plus, so we're just going to talk about Chrono Warden right now for the sake of this video, and I'm going to show you guys why I think that some of the changes are amazing, why I think they missed the mark, and where we need to go. So the cool thing is most of our talent choices at the top of the tree are unchanged. This is kind of the de facto choice selection for the first, couple points in the tree, and I'm not going to be going over what any of these things are as they haven't changed. Now I'm going to talk about the flexibility and how our decision making is going to change in choosing the rest of our nodes. So I'm going to be taking the exact same things as before. We're not taking Emerald Communion, huge healing CD, and the rest of these actually become choice nodes. Specifically, if you're playing Chrono Warden, I would argue Spiritual Clarity is way too impactful not to take. The majority of your power from playing Chrono Warden in Mythic Plus is from your Spirit Bloom because of 3 key talents. 1, you have Reverberations, which increases the healing of Spirit Bloom by 30% and puts it into a hot, essentially over 8 seconds. So this shifts power from being a direct heal to a heal over time. Second is that you have Primacy, so for each one of these healing hots you have over time, you gain haste. And most importantly too, you have Instability Matrix, which reduces the cooldown of your Empowered spells by up to 6 seconds. You're not gonna not be taking this as Chrono, as all of your power in the tree is from Spirit Bloom. This should be baseline by now. I have no idea why Blizzard insists on us having a 30-second Spirit Bloom talent node, and I think that this is bloated. I think this should be gone, but we have to take this in keys. Now, I'm going to be taking Rush of Vitality, as we need one of these nodes to get down to Call of Ysara. This still interaction is way too powerful for us to give up in Mythic Plus, especially with the recent buffs to our Chrono Flame and Living Flame, interactions with Life Spark and as well Life Bind. This talent is nuts, and I don't foresee myself for right now, unless they change something, dropping this as for a 1 talent point node. This ends up being like 7% of my healing. So anyway, let's move back up here and look at the problems. All right, so Golden Hour is again de facto. I'm going to be taking Golden Hour and Time Lord, as this increases my echo healing by 50%. So 2 very powerful node options, and it's going to be taking us down to Lifebind, which is our node selection to get down here. Lifebind is again cookie cutter for preservation, and now I'm at the point in the tree where I think some of this is fleshed out. So let's talk about one of the new talents that we have, which is Unshakable. Unshakable increases the effectiveness of your empowered abilities by 10%. So this is including Fire Breath, Dream Breath, and Spirit Bloom, and gives you the ability not to get knocked back while casting these abilities. I think that this is really neat, and I think that this talent is awesome. I'm not too happy about where it is in the tree, but we'll get to that in a second. I think one of Preservation's weakest points is having to get a spell canceled when you're getting knocked. This actually doubles down as kind of a pivot, as maybe now when we have knock abilities in Mythic Plus. Specifically, the one I think about the most is like first boss in Eltharian Slayer. I think I'd be casting a Spirit Bloom and have to time it in a way that the Spirit Bloom launched so that it landed when my party got knocked. I think that this is a really cool talent and something that a lot of evokers have asked for, especially from a beginner perspective. I think this allows beginners to feel a little bit more less punished when trying to pick up Prez, as nothing feels worse than casting a 4-second empowered ability and getting it cancelled. So let's take this as specifically to increases all our throughput on our empowereds by 10%. This synergizes with Spiritual Clarity, with our entire Chrono Warden tree around Spirit Bloom. Making Spirit Bloom 10% more powerful is awesome, and now we can't get knocked back. Great. Alright, so now we're at a point where we need to make a selection to move down the tree. I need 2 talent points here, and we're going to talk about our new choice node, which is Just in Time and Delay Harm. So delay harm now adds it so that TD gives an absorbed amount, so it makes TD a better tank or DPS external. This shifts away some of the stagger to just having a 15% flat DR and a 35% stagger over time. This is pretty good. I think for a niche perspective, it makes it so that your tank might get less scared from getting time dilation if you're not watching them. However, I really want to play this talent. I think having to charge the TD on a 50-second cooldown is nuts and is going to add a lot of liberty to the kit. I'm going to talk about why this feels impossible to get as we move down the tree. So we still have to choose two things here, and for the sake of argument, I'm not going to choose TA. Temporal Anomaly and Resonating Sphere is an insane power gain in Mythic Plus. Specifically, if you've played Preservation Mythic Plus, you know that you're using Temporal Anomaly to spread out your echoes and then put up Reversion. Reversion is going to give you Grace Period, which increases the healing of Reversion targets by 10 or 20% if they have 2 echoes on them. So this is a 20% healing node during important healing ramps. In addition, this synergizes with Life Spark, which is going to give us passive free Living Flames. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but this does synergize with our set bonus coming up, and because of how insane the buffs were to Chrono Flame in the 0.7 patch, I don't see a world where we don't run Life Spark. Alright, so now we've unlocked this part of the tree. This is still all unplayable. There's no world where I get Spark of Insight, I get down to Dream Breath or Ouroboros, because this is too valuable. The biggest blunder I've seen Blizzard make is make this a choice node. Stasis and Temporal Artificer now share a node, which means that Temporal Artificer will never, ever be chosen, and gives us a problem down here, which I'm going to talk about. Stasis is probably your single most important and impactful healing spell in the Preservation tree, as it allows you to not only do a bunch of tricks, but store all your empowers and your TA in one button. This is not only hyper mana effective, but this is a way of ensuring that you can make important throughput checks in a lot of very difficult encounters. Stasis also lets you store things like Dispels, Cauterize, and any choice of combinations that you want with your healing spells. Way too powerful, not going to be dropping it. The default, okay? So we talked about Life Mender's Force and Life Spark. I'm not going to talk about this enough, but as Key does scale and Gear does scale, Life Force Mender exponentially scales. So as your Living Flame does more damage with Intellect, you are now going to have it be doing more damage and healing based off of your maximum health. This scales with your gear, this scales with things like Fort Buff, etc. Funny enough, nobody actually knows this, but when you increase your maximum health by 20% with Rush of Vitality, you're actually increasing your Living Flame damage as well, so cool interaction. So now that we've got Life Spark, Life Force Mender, we have 6 talent points left in the entire tree, and I'm going to have to get down to the bottom. Timeless Magic, again, this should be baked in and default in the Pres tree. I don't even know why this exists. And now we have to go down and choose our last 4 talents. So 1, Grace Period, I think this should also be baked in. I think that this being a capstone talent is a little bit archaic. But for the sake of it, if you're running Temporal Anomaly, you're running Resonating Sphere, and you're running Life Spark, these 4 nodes interact way too well with each other. If I don't take the Grace Period, I am going to be giving up on 10 to 20% healing on my party, which, you know, in some cases I might not need. I think that, you know, Pres healing is going to be really insane after this patch, so we're going to see what that looks like. But we're going to talk about this new talent called Tempo Charged. Tempo Charged increases the healing of your next empowered by 5% per stack of Temporal Compression. For those of which are familiar with the Temporal Compression mechanic, every time you cast a bronze spell, so when you cast Reversion, when you cast Echo, when you cast Temporal Anomaly, you're going to get a stack of this Temporal Compression. This is a play on the Season 1 tier set, which is going to mean that you're going to be tracking Temporal Compression stacks to increase the effectiveness of your next empowered by up to 20%. So Temporal Compression does stack up to 4, and this is going to be 20% damage or healing on Flame Breath, or your Dream Breath or Spirit Bloom. This is pretty damn strong. I think that this is a cool capstone. I think that this should just be baseline with Temporal Compression, but we'll talk about it in a sec. And now I only have 2 talent point options left. I want to be picking up Lifegiver's Flame because this is about 5 to 8% of my healing in any key. This does synergize now with tempo charged, and it does synergize with Font of Magic, which is going to be drastically increasing the damage and healing of Fire Breath. And lastly, because of how good Spirit Bloom is, and I want Spirit Bloom to be, you know, not only is this now synergizing with Unshakable and tempo charged, I think I'm always going to be taking Font of Magic. This is the one that I'm not sure about yet, but giving your Spirit Bloom an extra level of Empower and your Fire Breath an extra level of Empower is nuts. So this drastically increases the value of Life Giver's Flame. This drastically increases the power of, you know, things like Instability Matrix, Tempo Charge, Unshakable. But now we're out of talent points. We no longer have any choice node availability. And if anything, I lost talents. So here's what I mean by that. I picked up Unshakable. I have all my baseline mechanics, right? From last patch, I have Grace Period. I have this new talent, Tempo Charged. But now I can't even grab Energy Loop. So in High Mythic Plus, this talent is very, 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 very good, as it's going to allow you to never have to drink and have this nice trade-off between spending your essence on damage and mana. I don't think that Energy Loop's really that useful for damage. However, there are a lot of fights where you just kind of need this. Like, you get to the point where you're doing like these 17, 18, 19 keys, and you can't keep up on mana. And there's a lot of time where you just have downtime where you need to be regenerating. Mythic Plus gets very expensive, and as Chrono Warden, you're playing a lot of high haste to deal with these lifeline windows. We just lost this for free. Like, sure, we gained these two talents, but I lost Energy Loop, and I have no actual way of taking these new talents. Not to mention the fact that they actually turbo buff Dreamflight. I was messing around with this a little bit. It does a lot of healing. And their whole goal was to make this like so you could use this in Mythic Plus. I can't even touch this talent point. I cannot touch any of these things because these things are too valuable. These talent point nodes are completely useless, and there's no world where I can get Dream Breath healing. I can't even, like, Time of Need's just going to be completely unplayable. Like, there's no world I can even touch this talent. My only actual opportunity cost of, you know, taking this is like, okay, I give up, you know, a massive amount of empowered ability. I give up Spirit Bloom Empower, so I'm losing power from my healing to get 2 charges to TD. Okay, so what if I want Energy Loop? So I'm now giving up 2 charges to TD, or I'm giving up maximum empowered. We basically made this tree worse off than it was from before. Alright, so I'm Blizzard. How do I fix this? I think that there needs to be a revisit in how this redesign worked. I think that this is insane, that we've been given these really cool nodes, but I can't even pick them, right? Like, there's no way that I'm going to be giving up 20% healing or damage for 2 charges of time dilation, right? Like, let's tab over to live for a second. This was from a 19 Rookery, right? I'm going to be giving up 20% healing on Spirit Bloom or Energy Loop. I'm very confused about how Blizzard thought about this talent tree, because one, this is a useless talent. We're never going to ever be in any world giving up Stasis for 90 seconds rewind. So this isn't even a choice node. This is a redesigned dead talent. Make this baseline, make rewind 2.5 minutes, or make Stasis baseline or move it up in the talent tree. 1, done. Second, one of these things should be baseline. These talents are redundant. We have now Unshakable and this Tempo Charged. I personally would make this the talent that we keep, bake Tempo Charged in, and consolidate Temporal Anomaly and Resonating Sphere. Make Nozdormu the talent node at the bottom, make these 1 node so we have 1 more talent choice to mess around with, and make it so that TA and Nozdormu can be chosen together. I think that we are just now out a very valuable talent point, and I don't really know how to fix it. My second thing is Blizzard needs to start thinking about how we even work with this talent tree. We're going to talk about the tier set next, but as we get down there, I don't understand why Spiritual Clarity isn't baseline. I don't understand why Life Spark isn't, you know, in a more reasonable spot, or it takes 2 points in Life Force Mender. This should be 1 point. There should be this should just be completely rethought out. And if it were me, I'm going to show you how this would kind of look like. Alright, so I randomly opened up an image editor here, and I just want to look at this, right? This should be 1 talent. And if you're going to choose it, make Nozdormu a talent at the bottom. At this point, there's no reason to even play Nozdormu, and if we're going to be playing Resonating Sphere, these just become required. Like, this is way too much throughput and way too much synergy with Chrono Warden. This just needs to be reworked. I can't even believe that anybody would think that you would choose a shorter rewind over Stasis. I get from maybe a beginner perspective, if you know you're kind of intimidated about learning Preservation Mythic Plus. Hey, like maybe Stasis is confusing. Maybe Stasis, like you make mistakes and you put bad buttons in it. But even then, like what's 90 seconds off of a 4-minute cooldown gonna do? You're moving rewind to 2.5 minutes. Okay, it already doesn't do enough healing. It's not even a very good cooldown in Mythic Plus. So that needs to change. The fact that I can't access this, like, this is such a cool node. This is game-breakingly cool, and I can't touch it. I can't do anything with it. Fix this. Like, this needs to be in a way where I have a talent point that I can use here, and maybe there are folks that don't want to use Energy Loop. Why can't I do this here? This just doesn't make sense to me. So not only did we go backwards, I lost a talent point. I gained power that I didn't need. I gained, like, we're not going to not be taking this. But now I'm just losing talent points. I just don't understand. Anyway, now we're going to talk a little bit about Tip the Scales and the set bonus for the season. I think that this is actually the golden line in, I think. I'm going to talk about something really cool, which brings us closer to having a raid buff. Now, we're going to go back to my retail tab here, and I'm going to show you something about Threads of Fate. Threads of Fate is a talent node that we get as part of Chrono Warden, which allows us to put out this Threads of Fate multi-strike on party members after we cast Tip the Scales. So in the talent tree here, we have Temporal Burst. Every time you cast Tip the Scales, you're going to get Temporal Burst for 30 seconds, increasing your CDR by 30 seconds by 30%. So it ends up being about 4 seconds off some of your abilities every time you press Tip the Scales. So things like Rewind, Emerald Communion, Stasis. And you get to put out these Threads of Fate. Threads of Fate is a multi-strike ability, kind of like an external, which allows your party to have a chance of duplicating the damage that they deal by 15% of that damage again. This does scale with damage amps, with cooldowns, etc. And in my keystones, I'm going to bring up a random example here. I just opened this up. This was 1% of my shaman's damage, and I wasn't optimizing this in any way, shape, or form. On melee players, it usually performs better. So Threads of Fate in a really good key, I've seen overall hit 1.5% of my party's damage. So I'm adding a 1% raid buff to my party. Currently, right? Like just in before patch 11.2. Now, in the next season, we're going to be doubling our uptime of Tip the Scales, which means that, say this was the current season and I had this, now my Threads of Fate would be worth 2% of my shaman's overall here. And let's just compare it. I want to be fair, right? So let's look at our Unholy DK. Threads of Fate was 0.3% of his overall. So very big range, kind of crazy, right? Like my shaman had 1%, this guy had 0.3. It is a very RNG gimmicky kind of button. In most keys, it ends up being about 0.9% of my party's overall damage. So look at something here, it was about 100k. This is a bad key. So now we're doubling this Threads of Fate damage by just reducing the CD, cutting in half. This means that we are going to be actively adding about 2% damage to our party if you play Threads of Fate properly. You can look at logs. I have some posted in my Discord if you're interested in joining the conversation. But I'm actually kind of excited about this. I think this is really cool. I think this is a very unique way that Prez gets to act as an augmentation evoker. Often in Mythic Plus, when I don't have healing going on, I am sending Threads of Fate for damage. If you watched any of my videos, I talk about this a lot, because when you're in Bloodlust and CDs, I've seen Threads of Fate do upwards of 2% damage on my party's Bloodlust pulls. For instance, in the first pull of Priory, I think I have a log somewhere, it did 1.9% of my party's damage. So, if I get a second use in there, it could be worth 4%. Like, this is actually pretty massive. This is adding a lot of value to Preservation Evoker from a damage perspective, and as well, it's kind of adding a cool playstyle. I love Tip the Scales Haste. I think it's sick. More importantly, too, Haste does reduce the cooldown of life binds, so we're gonna have more life binds in that window. You're gonna have an extra healing CD. It is gonna be on a 1-minute CD now, so it's gonna be desunk from Stasis, but that's okay. I'm excited for this. I think this is cool. Now, the 4 set is also insane. I think Temporal Burst causes Chrono Flame to strike 1 additional target, meaning that 50% of the time you're going to be in Temporal Burst. 50%, right? If you're using Tip the Scales off cooldown. That means 50% of the time you're going to have this juiced up, amped Chrono Flame. So for damage, you're going to be cleaving to 1 additional target, or if you're using it at healing, like those Life Spark Brocs, which I talked a lot about, why they're so valuable. Call of Ysara, Life Spark, you Life Bind, and then you just shoot out an extra Living Flame. This is awesome. Like, this is a very cool set bonus. I'm really excited about this. I hope they don't change this. I think this might be a little too OP, but we'll see. We'll talk about Flame Shaper quickly. It's not going to be played in Mythic Plus, I don't think. But anyway. Engulf stokes your inner flame, increasing your damage healing over time by 40%, and increasing your chance to gain Essence Burst by 50% for 12 seconds. Now, I think in Raid this is going to be pretty potent. It's going to be pretty insane. But I think this is probably going to see a nerf. So the way that Engulf works, right, is that your healing over time basically determines the amount of the Engulf and Consume Flame. So 40% is very, very, very large. I don't really care about the Essence Burst part, but we could actually see, you know, there might be a build, if you can make it work, that you could maybe play Engulf in Mythic Plus. I think it's too awkward, but for Raid, this is going to be pretty cool. And finally, we see some love for Flame Shaper damage in Mythic Plus. Consuming Essence Burst during Inner Flame fires an Essence Bomb at your target, healing nearby allies for 500% of spell damage. This is pretty cool. I'm assuming too that this is also going to be damage, because I would hope that they change this to be damage as well, to like maybe make it so that when you engulf something you get this firebomb. It could be neat. Overall, I think this is going to get changed, so I'm not too worried about it right now. With that in mind, those are my thoughts on the preservation changes for the upcoming patch. I really hope, Blizzard, you're listening to this. You need to look at this tree and rework it. I think that this is completely missing the mark. I think you added a lot of very cool buttons. I think I just can't believe that I have finally 2 charges of TD, and all of a sudden I just lose energy loop. Like I just don't understand what the goal is here. I understand that there's supposed to be like meaningful and impactful changes for talents, but as somebody who's now played preservation at the highest level, like in Mythic Plus, and maybe one of the last high M plus theory crafters, or the last one, I don't really know anybody else that's looking at this right now. This is just, I don't know, man. I'm a little disappointed. So hopefully Blizzard, somebody is watching this, get this fixed. Rethink about the design flow of what you're doing here, because as somebody who is very interested in the design of preservation, I feel like there's a lot to be fixed, but there's a lot of cool potential. You can make cool choice nodes without taking everything away, right? If we didn't have this crazy synergy in here, maybe we could play Dreamflight in Mythic Plus. Maybe you could have, you know, for those crazy rod encounters like the Candle King, there could be a build where you get down here, but right now it's just not possible. Like if you're making Chrono Warden the Mythic Plus build, there's no world where we're dropping Grey Spear. I'm not dropping 20% healing. I'm not dropping 20% healing. I'm not dropping, you know, all this damage. And again, this like cohesion with Call of Ysara Life Spark. This is like 6 or 7% of my healing, right? I can't go to Dream Breath. I can't drop these buttons for TD. I can maybe drop Fauna Magic. Maybe this is a meaningful choice that you might think about, but this is still useless in my head. I feel like there's no world now where I can even touch Flow State. There's no button, like no talent I can even get this in anymore. And most importantly, I'm just really sad because this has become such an integral part of my toolkit. I can't touch Energy Loop. This is now dead. There's no world where anybody's going to take time and need. So if you're listening to this, Blizzard, please rework this, or please like take a second look. If this goes live, it's going to be playable. I think we might see some choice nodes, but I think we're just like 1 or 2 decisions away. Consolidate TA, give us an extra talent point somewhere, get rid of this choice node, make temporal artificer baseline, or make stasis baseline. This would be like that would be the solution right there. Switch these orders around, make stasis baseline, or make it somewhere up here. Combine Resonating Sphere and TA, make Nizdormu a capstone, consolidate Unshakable tempo charge, and this would be such a cool talent tree, man. Like, this would be so great. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully this video helped you guys understand my thought process in some of these changes. Do you think I missed the mark? Do you think that Blizzard actually did an insanely good job at this, or do you think I'm right? Feel free to drop something in the comments about what you would like to see in the Preservation Evoker changes. I've obviously talked about them in some of my comments and some of my videos. And if not, feel free to come join my Discord, where that forum now is kind of popping off. How would you like to see Prez? Do you think this cool Threads of Fate augmentation thing is awesome? Do you want to get rid of it? Anyway, thanks for all the love, thanks for the support, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.